understanding, or yes, yeah, you're looking at, you're like, hey, how do I feel?
So now you know the difference right here.
I thought you. Yeah, that's the difference.
I did, but here's the question. This is the reason why, like, I would have wanted to ask you these questions before you left, because it seems like what you keep doing is, with all your analogies, you keep first describing sympathy that functionally happens, and then after that, like, sort of peddling in the fact that, like, that sympathy would be rooted in some kind of, like, empathetic reflexive mechanism of some kind, right? Like, so because you're sympathizing from the perspective of empathy, and then that kind of muddies the water a little bit. So the question is, like,
I think that's like a function. I think we sympathize before we empathize, right? We like sometimes, like, unless it's like kind of conscious. I think unless it's conscious, right?
That's an interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so like, for example, like, you might feel bad, right? And then you give that more thought.
Listen to what he keeps saying. Emotional resonance.
I think
right. Like
he's trying to talk.
He's saying that he can what's the word again? He can resonate.
Resonate,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yes. So he can resonate emotionally. So because they're sad and he's been sad, he could resonate.
I just want to know.
Yeah. Okay. So then, Incan, by that logic, given where the conversation ended up going yesterday, I would have to say, I
Come on.
I think you lost, but I also don't want to be biased, because then maybe I might disagree. Because
what did I miss? What did I miss?
Whoa. Okay. So the cognitive, the point about cognitive empathy, right?
Oh yeah, but that was never on the table, right? Like, cognitive empathy is like that's like part of empathy, right? Like that wasn't. It was never a discussion of like, look, there's cognitive empathy and then there's sympathy. Samoa's claim is like, hey, you must know their account, right? Their account, like, by their own words, right? For you to show empathy. Without them relating to you their story, then you cannot have empathy. And I'm like, no, I think that there's many cases where you can have empathy, where you don't have their account, right? So Mo's putting this barrier where you have to hear it from the horse's mouth, and only then can you display empathy. I'm saying no, that's not like the same thing, right? There's this difference where you can put yourself in someone's shoes, right? And they could be inaccurate shoes, if you want to use that analogy, right? They can be inaccurate shoes, but that's functionally different from just feeling bad for somebody, right? That's different, right? You can feel bad for somebody, true, but then if you try to, like, I don't know, like, channel the way that they feel by cross-referencing something in your life to try to make an amalgamation of what that person could possibly feel, I'm saying that's a different approach. Right? And that approach doesn't necessitate you having to talk to that person. That in itself is a different methodology, if you want to call it that.
Okay,
than just feeling bad for somebody.
So wait, parts of that are true. To the degree that, like, it's, I'm not sure.
Yeah, the logic only works if you ignore the part that
you got brewed, Carl.
Wait, hold on.
That's right.
That's right. So here's the thing. So there's a implication with what you're saying that, like, necessarily empathy involves, let's say, the feelings of somebody else, and kind of ignores, like, let's say, the thoughts of somebody else, which is what I guess Samoa is getting at. That, like, the thoughts matter as well. Like, take away the emotional resonance thing. Like, when you're dealing with something as complex as, like, cognitive empathy, somebody can, like, rationally recognize sort of, like, pattern and other things the person will be going through other than their feelings as well, right? Like, you have this, like, neutral space where somebody doesn't necessarily like, this is why I brought up psychopathy, right? Like, the psychopaths are actually technically capable of cognitive empathy, but they don't necessarily, like, emotionally resonate with the people around them, right? And that's a type of empathy.
Yeah, but you're explaining the outcome, not the reason the outcome thinks it exists.
So, like,
90% of the conversations you have are based on the empathy. So
I want to point out something that I think that this is, like, kind of drives the point that I'm trying to make home, right? I gave Samoa keeps on saying, no, you have to have their understanding, right? And I'm saying, look, you're trying to say, like, download link cable that you connect to the person, and you now, like, forego your understanding and then become there. I'm like, that never happens, right? So I tell Samoa, right? I'm not saying you read a book, either one of them loves it. I'm not saying that. Like, hey, look, one of the things with this analogy, I would like for it to, like, at least the essence stay the same, right? You read a story, right? Like, let's say you read a novel, and it's through the eyes of the main character, right? The whole thing, right?
Yeah, but
it goes through the action.
Causality still applies, though.
what the fuck are you guys talking about?
Yo, chill. Listen, this is so fucking stupid. Fuck you. Okay. So, it's like a book, right? And it's through the eyes of the character, right? And they do X or Y thing, right? And it could be that the ending is, like, morally ambiguous, right? I'm saying, look, we could both read the same book, right? and everything that's gone in the story is through the characters, perspective. Even their thoughts are like exposed in this book, right? Everything is from their perspective. Me and you can walk away with different feelings about that character. We both came to quote unquote Samoa's understanding, but yet we feel different. That only
That's
happens.
kind of the point.
Yes, yes, I'm saying that only happens because we never let go of our quote unquote understanding. We always cross reference it with our own experience and our own moral compass. So this whole idea of like, oh yeah, you forgo your understanding and it's like this new thing that is different from whatever you were doing when you had less information. I'm saying no, even with more information, you're still doing the same thing that I'm doing, right?
Yeah,
you just have more details.
Yeah, with all due respect, you're saying moral compass, like
Is this Elijah or is this who is this?
yeah, but a moral compass.
Hey yo, Boba Dio, I just want to say, bro, they said that your ID looks mad funny, bro. All right, bro. It says that it doesn't say 2 PhDs, and that was wild. Right? Yeah.
It's about alignment, not information.
Yeah, dude, this is fucking crazy.
Do you want to debate me on mathematics? I can win that debate.
Mathematics, multiply. Yeah, I get you, bro. I don't really
Why we couldn't reconcile this yesterday.
Yo, Laura, I mentioned Will. I actually do remember me and you didn't have that many interactions. My bad if I came off as like trolling. I didn't. So I know
You actually skip the invisible step everyone skip.
That's true, man.
And can I just find out? Can I just find out?
It's about mirror neurons and like childhood development, how children develop empathic response. It doesn't have anything to do with exchange of information. It's literally about trial and error and like walking reactions.
Yeah, if you come off that, a lot of people
Julie, but you get what I'm saying, right, Julie? Like, there is no foregoing of your understanding, right? There is none of that happening, right? You have more details, but you're still cross-referencing it, right? So this mechanism
No. Incan. So, yeah. Okay, so I think the
how it
problem
works.
is, right? The part, just hold on. The part that I think Samoa disagrees with, and Samoa can step in here, right? But like, I think the part Samoa disagrees with is like the necessary sort of like implication that like when you're talking about cross-referencing, that you're now like cross-referencing like for the purposes of like creating some kind of like emotional resonance part, like that. That's sort of like implied that the thing that you're referencing within yourself is the feelings that you've had in that particular moment. And Samoa is saying that no, it's possible to actually be able to still empathize without necessarily having felt that thing before. So like, or had that experience before. So for example, and we gave the example of the children. Like, so for example, when you teach children to do good things for, let's say, homeless people or whatnot, like most children have never been homeless. Most children don't know what like that sort of like destitute thing feels internally. Like they have no real cross reference, but then they're able to sort of like carry out that pattern and read the social cue that like.
Oh yeah. I agree. I told Samoa this. Samoa had a weird example, right? I just want to say it's weird. That shit, like, I don't mean like shade. I just want to bring this up. Like, I came out of thin air. Samoa's giving an example, like, hey, what if somebody says, hey, my mom. He said, and I he said, and I quote, what if somebody says, hey, my mom died? I'm like, damn, I feel bad for you. He's like, nah, she was a bitch. Because she pimped me out, right? She pimped me out in this. I'm saying, hey, look, while that's happening, I've never been pimped out by my mother, right? But I'm going to try to cross-reference like something like, imagine my mother that I love betraying me, and I'm going to maybe like understand the concept of like rape.
Okay, wait,
to make an amalgamation.
Wait, before you carry that out, I just want to point out, I can already foresee a problem here, which is that like by Samoa's standard, you wouldn't be empathizing if that's the game you're playing, right?
Yes,
because then at that point, what you'd be doing is you'd be projecting your own sort of like previous experience of like motherhood onto the person that they might not necessarily like have. Like so, like that's a good example because it's like somebody like you just said. Imagine if I had like a mother who I loved who betrayed me. And it's like no. None of that might actually matter to the person that we're talking about, right? Somebody might legitimately have never experienced that love from their mother. They might have like legitimately hated their mother. Like in this particular example, why wouldn't we just as well assume that like the mother had been doing this from day one and had only like functionally been like breeding this child or like rearing this child for the purposes of picking them out, right? So then at that point, it's like they never felt their love from their mother. Like their only experience with their mother would have been like their mother being a pimp. And it's like they have no like referential thing where the mother was ever loving. Why would that necessarily be the case?
Yes,
And
and
then
I'm
how would
saying,
you
hey, look,
cross-reference it? And then how wouldn't it be the case that like you're cross-referencing with your own sort of like love and nature with your mother
yes.
would be necessarily wrong?
Yes, I got you. So like this is what I was trying to point out, right? I'm like, hey, look, you're never going to be able to like recreate that like accurately in your mind. What you're going to do is you're going to take certain elements, right, and you're going to put them together to try to be like, how would I feel, right? So in this case, right, you'd be like, hey, imagine if my mom never loved me, how would I feel about that, right?
Samoa's going to disagree because it's not about how you would feel.
Yes, but there's no way for you to get how they feel, right? Samoa's saying, look, you have to get their understanding. I'm saying, Samoa, there's no way that you're going to
can exist, but not there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm saying you're never going to understand, quote unquote, what it's like to growing up with a mom that doesn't love you, that pimps you out, right? Because that's a completely dysfunctional life, right? The implications are so nuanced and they're varied in every detail that you'll never get an accurate picture. So when you say get an understanding, you're actually just referring to like an arbitrary amount of information this person is supposed to have that you can't really name, right? You're not saying that you have to have it to like a 90% accuracy for it to be empathy, right? That interaction is going to be dependent on how I form these concepts that are foreign to me. That are foreign to me, right? And I'm saying that's what we all do anyway, right? We can't recreate that in our mind accurately. We can just have best approximations and try to be like, how would I feel in that case, right? And try to resonate, right? And I'm saying that's just the way that it is, right? And then Samoa saying, no, because when he does that, he's passing you his understanding, and now you have this magic ability to empathize.
Yeah,
and I'm
but
saying,
have you entered lived experience into the equation?
Yo, Q, who's talking right now? Yeah, who's talking, dude? I can't see the stage right now, bro.
Yeah, I wasn't looking either.
That
Sometimes niggas
was,
gonna be quiet now because
that was David. That was not me.
No, that was David.
niggas keep ankle biting. Okay, so.
Y'all don't see the little stage?
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like what you're saying is that, like, based on what Samoa is saying, that, like, that's a weird and impossible standard of empathy, and that, like, functionally that's not how it works, right? That ultimately we're always necessarily going to be sort of, like, projecting our own experiences onto our interpretation of a person's given circumstances in order to sort of, like, figure out what that person might necessarily be going through, thereby calling that empathy, right?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Well, we're talking about empathy, right? Yeah, Samoa saying like,
can I just point out where the fundamental tension between you and Samoa is? Samoa is pointing out that, like, well, look, if, at the point at which you're talking about projecting your own experiences onto, like, your perceived case file of this person's, like, circumstances, you're no longer actually, like, doing empathy properly, and, like, empathy necessarily involves introjection as opposed to, like, projection, right?
Yeah, and I'm just saying that's not realistic, right? There's what you're saying is like.
Wait. Okay, and here's the problem. Whether or not it's realistic is substantively not the thing that Samoa cares about. He's talking about, like, the standard for the difference between, let's say, empathy and sympathy.
This is the stupidest people ever. Talking about nothing.
Own examples, so you say like, no, now you come to their understanding, and now you can. I'm like, no. You just said understanding, right? Like right now, in the conversation we've had, we both agree that all we're just doing is projecting, right? By trying to make this amalgamation of what this person could possibly feel like, right? We already understand it, like, no, but now, when you get to their understanding, then you can. And I'm saying, no, like, you say empathy is this, and if we just break down what you're doing by your own definition, you're not doing it, right? What's doing the heavy lifting in your argument is us just taking for a fact that they have this understanding, and all of a sudden they like connected a cable and downloaded all their life experiences so they could feel all the nuances. And me and you both know that's impossible, right?
I'm trying to listen to it, bro.
No, I am. In your examples, you said you come to a new understanding and then you can be empathetic, right?
Everything that I'm hearing you do right now, Aiken, is you driving the M2. You're not allowing the person to drive at all. It's just you. You're just driving the car while they're just sitting there, and you're just projecting your ego and your persona onto this person. Like, how arrogant is that? How anti-empathetic is that?
Okay, so I would ask you the following, right?
I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. You gave us 2 examples of somebody being empathetic yesterday, as opposed to them not being empathetic. Can you run us through those examples again? One of them was like the whole like I lost my mom thing, right? Can you run us through that? Because how you can be empathetic towards that person?
Yeah, so like what you just said there, you say, hey man, I'm sorry for your loss, bro. It was like, I'm not. Fuck the bitch. You're like, whoa, how can somebody possibly say that? Here, tell me. Well, I was 1 year old, and this bitch did this, and that, and this, and that. And then when I was 2 years old, this bitch did this, and that, and this, and that. Before you know it, you just sat in front of this 4-hour documentary about all this disgusting things that you've never thought possible that a person as a quote-unquote mother could ever do. So now you're out of your comfort zone. You don't know what the fuck's going on right now. You're saying, whoa, this dude went through some shit.
Yeah.
I know why he's there. Fuck.
At that point,
have a good day.
Am I at that point I'm being empathetic?
Yes, because you're now.
Yes.
Yeah, hold on. So you're now understanding how this person feels in their shoes. You're not projecting anything onto them.
Yeah, I would disagree too. Do you see where the issue that I'm talking about? Samoa is proposing to be able to be exposed to things that are foreign to him and come to the same understanding that that person has and feel the same way that they feel, right? Me and you both know that just because you're able to picture it doesn't mean you're going to feel it the way that they felt, right? There's obviously details that went on in his daily life that are going to be missed, and you can make some case are essential for you to feel the way that he felt, right? And that's what I'm saying, right? At the end of the day,
this is all or nothing fallacy.
No. Well, that's the issue that what you're trying to say. What you're trying to say is there cannot be any projection, right? There cannot be like any interjection of like
no. In the example that I just gave, you allow, like, remember I told you that you're driving the M2. You're allowing this person to drive
the MR2
or the MR2. So you're allowing this person to drive the MR2, and what you're doing here is they're taking you on a ride that even you can't fathom. And now you're like, bro.
Wait, hold on. Can I just?
Oh yeah, do you think?
Can we try and like sort this out without like getting lost in the analogies real quick? So real quick. Again, I see the problem you're pointing out. Okay, so if I understand it correctly, you're essentially saying that like there is no world in which like we are never projecting onto sort of like the facts of the matter, like how we necessarily feel, to make these calculations about how the other person feels. So therefore, like projections are necessarily like function of empathy, right?
Yes.
Okay. And
even necessary.
Okay.
They're
cool.
necessary, actually.
So here's where I'm gonna do something that's like not fair moderation here, but like I'm gonna insert a new argument here and then see what you think. Okay, so the thing I would say in response to that would be, in that particular case, it's true that we are consistently like sort of like projecting these things, but like when we are projecting those things, we're not actually necessarily like participating in or we're not actually empathizing, right? We're processing, but like that's not where the empathy necessarily happens. The empathy necessarily happens after we are able to sort of like start to like reject our own internal biases in order to like look at things objectively, right? So until we start to do that wouldn't necessarily be empathy. I'm not denying that like projection consistently happens because we have no other way to sort of like function without that. But at the same, like we wouldn't call that process that stage in the calculations the empathy part.
Yeah, and I disagree, right? Because I feel like you say like objectively, right? And I'm saying like, well, obviously we know that you can't do that, right? So you're meaning in some like more accurate way that would be still be subjective, right? Why can't you like
be
objectively?
Yeah, like
I don't know.
Your biases.
Because that would mean that you're aware of your biases, right? So your subconscious biases, also your life experience.
To be fair, let's say to the best of your ability. So I'll with every example that you give, supposing okay. So with every analogy that you're giving, supposing that like a person first starts to project and think about like how they would feel in a particular situation in X, Y, and Z, but then empathy starts to happen at the stage at which they say, well, look, I'm not that particular, right? So I need to sort of like remove how I feel because I understand that like I feel this particular way because I value this particular thing. Imagine if I didn't value this particular thing and then I participated in this sort of like metacognitive exercise to strip away the at least known biases in my own sort of like purview. Obviously, it's never going to be 100% perfect, but that process of stripping away those known biases in order to understand another person wouldn't necessarily be the empathy. And here's the thing: all of these analogies that we've discussed so far are simple for us to sort of like get into. They're comfortable because we're talking about like feeling bad or good for another person. What happens when you have to empathize with somebody who's a horrible piece of shit, right? Like
Yeah.
let's say a rapist.
Yes. Yes. It becomes more obvious that you have biases, right? You have that feeling.
Exactly.
And what I'm trying to say, Huey, is that line is imperceivable to us, right? We can put like some type of marker and like because it feels like intuitively okay. There's no real way of measuring that, right? There's not like a checklist.
Okay, wait, Inga, let me ask you. Wait, hold on that note. Yeah, so to tie this in with what you're saying now, okay. So have you ever heard like somebody say, well, look, I would never rape, but I can kind of understand and I can kind of see how somebody gets to that point where they do.
Yeah, I've heard people say that.
Wait, are you capable of doing that?
Yeah, I'm capable of doing that, right? Feel kind of nasty doing it, but yeah.
Yeah, same. Like personally, I feel kind of nasty, but it's like I can understand it to the degree to which, like if we had to now create sort of like policy around it, it's important to have this ability to understand that or to be able to empathize and to like if we're gonna start talking about systemic changes or policy changes and start like thinking about like addressing this at an early stages in childhood development, we kind of unfortunately need to be able to empathize with the type of people that we might necessarily like find abhorrent or disagreeable, right? So it's kind of like, okay, sure, I can empathize with those people to that degree, but that's not the same as me projecting my lust onto. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not.
Yes. And I'm saying that like the word empathetic when it comes to those things, it's kind of vague, right? Because it's kind of like vague in a way that, by like, I don't want to say by necessity, right? But there's no way to real gauge that. Let's say you're like, I can kind of see, like, no, you can't see it the way I see it, because I'm imagining like being rejected since you were a kid, and like this girl that I like, and I had an experience that a girl didn't like me, right? And now I really like that girl, so I can do it better. And then we get into this thing where like all these small details are valid reasons of why you're empathizing better than the other person, right? And so we can imagine how you can empathize better, right? And that the question is like the question is like whether you can imagine how you can empathize worse, right? But like what Tamola is trying to say, like this is where it starts and this is where it ends, right? Like this is the cutoff line, right? Like me and you are talking about ways where we can empathize more, we can empathize a little bit less, right? But Tamola is saying, look, this is the moment where like it becomes empathy, right? At their understanding. And I'm saying, look, even though that sounds like intuitively okay, I think that empathy is like better separated by like the approach that you're trying to take, right? Just feeling bad for somebody, right? I feel bad for them, right? Rather than trying to put yourself in their shoes, right? Then trying to say like, how would I feel, right? Like you would call it like cognitive empathy. I'm saying that's like a different approach, right? You're already like taking a step to like try to feel how they would feel. And that's essentially different from that. And that's a clear distinction. Then at what point, how many biases do I eliminate? How many stories do I hear? How many deep details do I try to comprehend? How many of my own life experiences do I have or do I not have to be able to quote unquote qualify as empathy? Saying that marker is always going to be very obscure, it's going to be very vague. There's going to be really good arguments of why it should be placed higher, really good arguments of why it should be placed lower, like the ones that you just brought, right? So how good should we be able to empathize with a rapist before it's enough, quote unquote, right? Or can we qualify it as empathy? And essentially, it's kind of nonsensical trying to put it a marker like here or there, right? I think it's better differentiated by its approach and what it's trying to do, regardless of how effective it is.
I just want to say I agree. I think I agree with I agree with how your specific approach. I guess the question then becomes, because I did have a question for you before I let you and some more have it back and forth to I guess figure this out, right? My question for you would be, why is what you're describing not, let's say, projected sympathy as opposed to empathy?
It could be. I'm not trying to say. I'm just saying it's empathy, right? It could be cognitive empathy. It could be projected empathy. Essentially, I think that all empathy is going to need projection, right? I think that there is no way to objectively view things, right? It's always going to be subjected to your own experiences, the lack or you having them. So that's
no. Okay, so wait, you okay? So then we just need to reconcile this then, right? Because Samoa is saying, like, for all intents and purposes, the empathy is functioning about introjection as opposed to projection. Like so let's not forget that we're not just projecting mechanisms, right? We're also interjecting mechanisms. So in other words, like we have a sort of like a super egoic nature that like allows us to sort of like absorb a whole bunch of values and information and sort of like these social cues in the first place. Why is empathy not necessarily as a function of that, as opposed to a persistent sort of like projecting? Like, why is the empathy not in the sort of taking in of other people's experiences and then just sort of like accepting face value that like experiences X are likely to lead to reactions or internal outcomes Y?
Can you repeat the first part of that?
Okay, I'll give you I'll give an example. You know, there was this old idea in anthropology a while ago that we were evolutionarily like adapted to like be scared of snakes. Yeah. You heard that? Apparently that's wrong. That's like completely just false because they put a whole bunch of babies.
Not Jordan Peterson. How dare you? The snake comes and, we've always been afraid of snakes. Because we've been in trees and if the snake gets you, it'll take your bones.
Have you seen the experiment that sociologists did where they took like a trained python or whatnot and they put babies next to it and the babies had no idea they were playing with the python perfectly fine?
Oh, what?
No. You haven't seen that? Okay, just go to YouTube. It's like one of the craziest shit you've ever seen. Like,
next thing you're saying, they were not lobsters, bro.
No, and these were like real. Here's what's crazy. These were babies who were capable of crawling. So I think they needed the babies to have enough like motor control to be able to touch without like injuring the snake. But basically, they had like one of these like trained snakes or whatever, obviously sterilized for salmonella, and then they basically did the same thing with the python. Obviously, this was moderated. They were never going to just let the python go up on the babies, but like the babies had no problem like touching the snake, engaging with it. Like some were even trying to like suck on the snake, right? Like as babies do. And it turns out that like this idea, and they did this with lots and lots of babies. It's like it turns out like this idea that like we have this like inbuilt reflex to just be able to respond to snakes is just wrong. We're socialized to actually be afraid of snakes altogether.
Oh damn!
Right. All of that's to say, which is fine. Like, I actually have no problem with the fact that like we are socialized to be afraid of snakes because that would be functionally necessary. However, right, like however you slice it, like there's a functional necessity to sort of like understanding that like you're not going to be able to download all the necessary information about every single thing about which one's poisonous and whatnot. It's a functional heuristic to just basically be scared of snakes, but that's socialized into us necessarily, right? So that's like a value. That heuristic forms a set of like values about like what things, what creates a set of values as to like how you approach the world around you, right? And that's necessarily downloaded. It's not something that's like inbuilt, right? Yeah. Okay. Why isn't that the case that like for like most things that we do, like social cues that we do? So the social cue with the snake. Sorry, the reason I brought this up with social cues. The social cue with the snake is that like, okay, when you see a snake, generally be careful, generally avoid it, generally treat it like it's poisonous. Despite the fact that like there's so much evidence to the contrary. Your values are like, nah. If I'm picking between a snake and this animal, I'm always going to pick the other animal over the snake, right? It's affected your value system at that particular point, right? Like, but that's like a downloaded thing. If you didn't have that downloaded thing, you probably have a different approach to that particular value. So in other words, what I'm saying is that like, given that like values are sort of like downloaded super egoically, why isn't it the case that like you could persistently like download those values super egoically in order to be empathetic?
Yeah, because I think that they if you download like a value, right? I think that you act upon it. You either like you trial and error, you like persist or fight to back, right? It takes time to incorporate into who you are, right? So that, right? I think it takes time. I mean, you can picture yourself like for example, like I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody's talking about stealing, and be like, yeah, I used to steal a lot, and you're talking like, in like so they're happy about this thing that they stolen, right? And let's say you choose to indulge that, right? And be like, I'm going to imagine the stealing isn't that bad, and then you try to give yourself reasons, they steal from us, yada yada yada. Stealing is not that bad, right? I would say that at that point you're just kind of like making this. It's not that you've downloaded the value of like not having anything of being stealing. At that point, what you're just doing is you're trying to like negate or like have like some artificial inclination towards that behavior and ignoring momentarily your repulsion towards that behavior, right? And I'm saying like, hey, look, we're capable of doing that. And that's not going to be accurate, right? And I would still qualify that as empathetic, right? Otherwise, we're running into like weird scenarios, right? Like take Samoa's example, right? What if you also had a mom that mistreated you in a different way, right? And when he says like, oh, I'm sorry, you just say like, oh, you're not even empathetic when his mom dies, right? Because that's not the relationship you have with your mom. And he's like, oh, don't. And you just say out of like, politeness, I'm sorry to hear that. He's like, no, she's a bitch. And then you're like, yeah, my mom was like, a B2, right? And then he describes his feelings, right? Inevitably, you're going to have this childhood where you didn't have a good childhood with your mom. It's going to be different, right? But you could say, look, now you're not coming to a new understanding of like them. You actually are more, under Samoa's definition, probable of not being empathetic because you've had a similar, but it's different enough for your like similar things to like impose how they would feel about something, which or the way they could be feeling would be much worse, or it could not matter at certain moments, right? We're just going to get into these weird things of like, to what accuracy? And I'm saying Samoa cannot get, without showing a marker, right? Where he said, like, now you're in a new understand, now you don't know, right? And I'm saying, look, that's just a weird marker, right? It's not an accurate one either. Therefore, we shouldn't use it, right? We could use qualifications like being more empathetic, being less empathetic, but making it the starting line of empathy because now you're blown away by these new events puts like a really high toll on whatever you're going to be listening to. Now it has to blow you away. Now it has to be something that you couldn't ever picture before. You would never see that way. And it could be, and I'm saying now you can't empathize about, I don't know, you getting a shitty grade and like this person like taking like some scientific course that you never took, but them getting a shitty grade. Now you can't empathize with them. I mean, like that doesn't make sense to me, right? It's not going to blow me away if they describe like how difficult it was. It's going to be analogous for me, right? But now I can't empathize because it's not blowing me away. There's no clear marker for what Samoa is implying that qualifies as empathy.
I think that's fair. Go ahead.
No, man, I was gonna.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like right on. I mean, I feel like you just said a bunch of this shit. Right. I think like it's so funny, Incan, that you just said basically the exact same shit that I already said after you left earlier. I'm like, you're creating this, you're alluding to this standard that you refuse to define. And then once we hone in on that, because you asked him the same shit last night, what exactly, how much do you have to know to say that you understand? Because this shit is just about you disagreeing on what it means to understand and shit like that. So it's like, you know what I mean? So
yes.
Yeah, man, I just thought it was hilarious that you said the exact same shit I already said, and me and you already saw this whole shit last night. So it's like, I don't know, bro. That was just kind of funny to me. But I think Huey did take it to a different direction. He added like interesting flavors
for like projectional empathy. I thought that those were fair things, right? I think those were fair things to say. Hey, look,
valid points.
Yes. I think that
I added that. Like Huey added that, but let me just point this out. And like you guys do comics and shit like that, like movies and shit. Like
you do comics? No, you
like a Ray. Like a Jean, like on X-Men, like she's an empath, right? And like Prue Halliwell on Charm, she's an empath. I think another movie is like Green Mile, like John Coffey.
Yes.
I think he's an empath. But notice like the thing that kind of connects all these people is that
they have superpowers.
No, that they have the ability of being called an empath, and the requirement of them is to take all of the pain, all of the anguish, all of the travesties of the experience of the people that they're helping at this moment upon themselves. So
that's a superpower. You're describing superpowers, right?
Well,
like they touch them and then they all of a sudden get their experience, right? My bad. I'm gonna shut up. My bad.
I'm just saying that if this is what we call an empath, I think this is pretty clear on what I'm saying. That you can't just look at the person 20 feet away and then see this person is cold, or that this person is crying, and that because you've cried before, that your cries are equal. And then you say, hey, I've cried before. But then this person talks to you and says why they've cried. Well, their dad died, then their mom died, then their sister died, and then everybody died, and then the whole village died, and then the atomic bomb hit, and then and you're like, what the fuck? I guess my cry isn't as bad as her cry. God damn it. What an asshole to try to project my cry versus her cry. Like, that's like not an egotistical thing to do. Just saying.
And that's like me saying, hey, look, you think you're strong, right? But we think of people like Superman and Hulk, and like the buildings that they lift, and like the planes they stop in midair. That's strong, right? And like, look, you're describing people that I'm saying need the same mechanism that you're alluding to, where they download the way that they feel by their experiences, right? That's the whole thing with the Green Mile, right? He puts his hands, and he's able to do that, right? And those empaths you're describing, that's their superpower. They touch the person, and all of a sudden they go through their
experience. Tell me what he's drawing on his own experience.
No, I'm saying that look, he touches the person, right? And he receives their experiences, right? Not through communication, but through this supernatural thing where now he has all of it, and it's like data being downloaded. I'm saying that supernatural is a superpower, right?
All right.
That word, the word empathy wasn't made to describe the supernatural, right? Like I'm saying that's not the case, right?
Wait. Wait. I feel like you're not contending with, like, let's say the analogy seriously past a certain point, because maybe the superpower is embedded within the fact that, like, that process happens instantaneously for them, but not necessarily like that empathy is the actual, like, threshold for it. So in other words, like, it's a superpower because of how quick it happens, but not necessarily because that's what empathy is, right?
So in other words, that's the thing about them, right? They touch the person and they take away their pain, right? By being able to, like, receive all of it. That's why they call it an empath. They're not even called an empath because they're like the way that you feel. They're actually called an empath because they take away their pain. So it's actually like, look, it's a non sequitur, Q. It's saying that an empath is somebody who's able to take away the pain.
That's all fine and good, but the point of the analogy, the actual point of the analogy is to demonstrate that, like, empathy is about the other person's experience, not the individual with the superpowers experience, right? Like, so, like, the threshold or the standard for what we're defining as empathy is about ultimately introjection and not projection. And that even though projection necessarily happens, because I knew he has some more content with this part, even though projection naturally happens, right? That's like a function of, let's say, a bunch of other cognitive processes that we wouldn't necessarily call empathy, is, I guess, what I'm asking you. Why is that not the case?
Why is it not okay?
Why is it not the case that okay, let me phrase it cleanly, right? Why is it not the case that the projection that you're talking about, that we naturally do when we're looking at situations that other people go through, is a part of, let's say, general cognitive processes, but not necessarily a part of empathy?
Okay, I think that it's necessary for it to be part of the
He's like circular Jason.
Yeah, so
no. Incan, I don't disagree with that part, because the problem is, Incan, the problem is it's also natural to make calculations as a part of it.
Because you can count the person's feelings. Yeah, so that's all it is. Projection about yourself and their situation, how you would feel, right? It's not dealing. You can have projections.
Wait, Incan, do you understand the argument I'm trying to put forward to you? What I'm trying to put forward to you is this. There are things that we naturally do as human beings, as a function of habit, as a function of cognition, as a function of, like, just our natural existence. We naturally project, we naturally introject. We're naturally, like, doing a whole bunch of these things at any given time, at any given moment. That's not necessarily what makes something empathy, though, just because we naturally do it. So for example, there's a whole bunch of subconscious processes happening at the point at which I'm empathizing, but they're not part of the empathy. So subconsciously, I might necessarily be storing the memories. Nothing to do with empathy, but that's also something that's happening in the moment when I'm empathizing, if that makes sense.
Okay, you're saying, like, how do you know this is not just another projection, your daily routine? And I actually do think that empathy is actually something natural, right? I think it's an ability that we have, right, to do.
I think you missed it, Incan.
No, that's not what I was asking. Incan, what I'm saying is,
I think you missed it.
Claims are depending on self-reporting, right?
Are they treated
Incan,
okay, wait, hold on. Okay, hold on, real quick. Incan, what I'm asking is this. The projecting that you say we naturally do when we're empathizing, why is that not something we naturally do as a function of just simply existing, but not necessarily being like a part of the empathy process?
I think, okay, that's kind of like begging the question, right? You're saying, hey, look, this is the mechanism in which we, because you're saying, hey, this is the mechanism in which we do it, but how do we know that's really empathy? And I'm saying, well, no, that's actually like empathy. That's what it is, right? Empathy is not this new thing, this new skill that you acquire.
No,
It's separate from your
Stop.
now.
Let me give you an example so that you can.
That was a good question. He would.
Okay, hold on. Okay, Inkin. When I'm empathizing, my heart beats. Okay? I'm also breathing in and out. Why aren't we saying that breathing in and out and heart beating are part of empathy? Do you see what I mean? Like there's this. Okay. So you now understand. And I'm saying there's things that are happening simultaneously, like as we empathize, that are like not like interesting to add to the definition of empathy for all intents and purposes. And what I'm saying is,
objection. I'm not sure why is that not definitions are surviving the discussion though.
And I feel like okay, when I initially heard your question, Huey, I was like, okay, I think Huey's saying that, being able to relate to a person is necessary but not sufficient. Perhaps I misunderstood.
No.
There's more things that, well, okay, but also, I heard, okay, what you literally just said was, we may be mistaking correlation for causation. That's all.
You're right about that.
I understand what you're saying, but so it's not a misunderstanding there. But I feel like dude did not respond to what you kind of said. And you're just asking him to justify his to justify that which we should consider causative factors. Am I mistaken in that?
No, you're not. Yeah, so sorry, I misunderstood what you initially said about the sufficient.
I was referring to something you said. I was referring to something that you had said earlier as a whole, because I think you're throwing in shit that's valid.
Hey, Incan, are you a giver or a taker?
Alejandro.
Hey, are you a giver or a taker, Incan?
No, you don't have to answer that question.
You be asking those questions, bro.
Hold on, bro. Are you a giver or a taker?
Yeah, I'm just not gonna answer that question without more context.
Right.
Yeah, you don't have to answer that question.
Just shut the fuck up. If you're a taker, then you would be empathetic. If you're a giver, you'd be sympathetic.
But the issue we were having is that you have to.
Samo, you're importing a lot of like normative weight into what's framed as.
This nigga's just throwing words in there, like bro, I've been really trying to be good, but this nigga, not like I had it like.
This says we're at a point where causality doesn't apply, bro. This guy's such a
With all due respect, don't call him the N-word. Don't call him the N-word.
This is like when Kendall was talking about the Germanic completion.
This is exactly Germanic completion right here.
Y'all gotta explain Germanic conflation.
I think that you're like some colloquial sense of the word empathy.
Honestly, Incan, I think you are.
Yeah, no,
I genuinely think you are because I think what you're doing is you're taking like our understanding of affective empathy,
so he
and
is
saying that unilaterally. And then you're saying that unilaterally, like necessarily the way affective empathy like functions, or like the outcome of affective empathy is necessarily empathy as a whole. And then when we point out, like for example, cognitive empathy as a subcategory functions slightly differently, you say, well, no, that's still part of empathy in general, and it's going to functionally work the same. But then you can't necessarily provide sort of like the same exact like processes for cognitive empathy that you're getting at with like affective empathy. So what I'm trying to ask, Incan, is this, right? When I'm empathizing, there's lots of things that simultaneously happening. Why aren't you also saying that like breathing in, like inhaling and exhaling, having a heartbeat, having blood circulating through your organs and doing X, Y, and Z are also part of empathy? Why aren't you adding those particular things?
Okay, because I think that although like we take that as a given, right?
Yes.
I think that the actions that we're doing get named on its what's the right word?
Do you understand my question though, right? Like why is it interesting? Because I think you've come to the same conclusion that because it's a given, it's functionally uninteresting to point out that those things are happening when you're empathizing.
Yeah, you're like asking like why do you call like running like moving your legs like that when your heart's also beating? And I would be like, I guess because what we're like describing, right? Even though we take that as a given, is like we're like what we're and just to make sure as you answer this, you connect it to what I was trying to ask you before.
for is, why isn't projection just one of those givens?
Because you have to name the distinction before performing it.
And that distinction has a cause and effect, so.
I feel like Incan did, like, in his little analogy throughout really quickly, he was saying, well, when you're running, your heart is beating.
Well, I think I know because I have a two PhD, so I think I know.
Yeah, dude, you got caught lacking, bro. They caught you with your work ID, bro.
Stop. Just keep the conversation going. It's just fucking ruin it.
Yeah, I think Huey, it's because of all the things that are happening, that process right there is like the main factor in whatever verb that we're doing at that moment, right?
No, that's not
so
true.
like, yeah, like, so I think that if you take everything of what we're doing, right, and that's like the main thing. Jesus Christ, what the fuck am I saying? Give me a second. Let me merge onto this fucking link. Give me a second.
So when you say verb, you mean like humping?
Yeah, Samoa. If you're humping someone, right? Why don't you describe it like you know, like how your knees are hurting at your age, bro? Well, why don't you describe that, right? Because the main thing that your body is doing, right, or what the distinction you're making, is that your body is like doing this action, right? And I think that's it, right? I think it's more important than breathing, than recollecting, than the memory, right? I think that's the main factor going on.
Why in your definition, Aiken, is it more about you than about them?
I'm not saying it's more about me than it is about them. I'm just saying these are
cognitive empathy Father.
Yeah, more about you than them?
Yes, because you're understanding how to feel what that person feels, so they become your own emotions. Affective empathy, is just mirroring without understanding.
Wait, hold on. All right, so in the cognitive,
but it breaks down. Wait. So you can show empathy without understanding, Aga?
Yes,
mirroring. Oh my God! There we go.
It's innate in.
That's what I was saying.
It's not so autistic.
You know, I'm telling you, bro. Huey gets on, bro. Huey's like, yeah, Incan has a point.
Okay.
Yeah, let me undermine him. This motherfucker's. Oh damn, bro. I wish I knew more about empathy, bro. About effective empathy. That's fucking crazy, bro.
Thank you very much.
Huey's laughing on silent right now, bro. Huey's laughing on silent, bro.
Hey, Incan, can you want to question?
Yeah, my bad, bro. Go ahead.
All right, so Hagat, in cognitive empathy, you have to adopt their feelings, right?
Says who?
Come on,
yes, it's called perspective taking. Yes, that's what you do.
Okay, so now you're a taker. Okay, thank you. So to be empathetic, you have to take it, just like how Deacon's about to take this out. Okay,
no.
So you're
an appeal to definition that you're kind of fucking up.
Yeah, that's their
affective. There's also affective empathy, which is just mirroring without understanding. And the baby cries because another baby cries because they realize that crying.
Yeah, okay. So when you said what he was describing was cognitive empathy, and he said it is not a requirement to adopt their feelings, you were wrong?
Yeah, that's wrong.
I mean, yeah.
Can you say that again? Because you were roboting for me. One more time.
All right. When he said it is not a requirement to adopt the other person's feelings, and in your definition, it is a requirement to adopt the other person's feelings.
Wait, I never said. If you're talking about me, I never said.
In terms of cognitive empathy,
it doesn't make any sense.
So cognitive empathy, you take on. It's called perspective taking.
All right.
In terms of affective empathy, you just mirror. There's no need for understanding.
All right, but how do you mirror something?
Oh my God, he's gonna break down what mirror is.
Really, the example is babies cry because other babies are crying, so they both feel sad without any understanding of what it is. The cognitive is with mind development, right? Is the development of like your consciousness and understandings of things. It's a whole theory called mind development.
Yeah, but you're confusing being empathetic with being a glue.
All right.
Yo, what the
Yo,
fuck?
he's saying anything, bro. He is just, yo.
All right, so
Jaguars a top tier troll.
Maybe I made a mistake. When he said cognitive empathy, he attributed that to Incan, but that's not what Incan's describing. Incan's saying that when you're engaging with people or persons, what you do is you reflect on your own understanding and your own experiences, and then you resonate with this person in that way. Right?
Yeah, you cross-reference it, right? The only way you know.
Combination of both. And affective empathy, which is like total empathy, but you guys are trying to like fight on which one is which without like really setting up your definition.
We've done that like a long time ago.
I just got it.
No, not really. No, actually, no. We haven't. Huey was the first one to bring up cognitive empathy. Then he said affective empathy. No, just being honest, bro.
Yes or no? Yesterday, yes or no? Yesterday, Samoa said it is a requirement to take the other person's quote unquote experience. Not
understanding. Nope, he said understanding.
Who cares? Not you in their shoes, but how they feel in their shoes. That's what I said yesterday.
Yeah, and that's not a agreed definition because of the extent that you took that analogy to start talking about like how can it be their shoes if you don't have this information, right? When the analogy only serves to show like, hey, look, you have your own experiences and now you try to put yourself in this person's shoes. It's
you're doing your thing. I'm just making sure that you could like just confirm that what I'm saying was said yesterday. As far as it's not about you being in their shoes, it's about understanding how they feel while they're in their shoes.
Absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, I feel like we're splitting hairs, but yeah.
That's putting yourself in their shoes.
No. No. So like you could put yourself in their situation, and then you can kind of like think about how you would navigate.
Yeah, that's the only option you have. That's the only option you have.
Just hold on. But then when they share their details of how they walk in their shoes, you'll see that their shoes don't actually fit you. Right? So when I say
taking a perspective.
Just hold on. Just hold on. So when I say
Taking it about how it's projecting perspective, though, right?
Absolutely. So see, when I say it's not you in their shoes, you knowing how they feel in their shoes. Like to me, that's totally different than you in their shoes.
Okay.
Right, like you might not feel comfortable in their shoes, and they feel really comfortable in their shoes.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Samoa, because true empathy is knowing how someone feels. And I think what you're saying is, this is how I would feel if I was them. And that's
what he's saying.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
like,
you can say that part.
Right. You're saying that true empathy, or what I feel you're saying is true empathy is not putting yourself in their shoes, but actually knowing how they feel.
In their shoes.
In their shoes.
Well, he's saying that empathy.
I said the same thing earlier, and you guys shut me down.
Because you said Germanic conflation with it, and it didn't make no sense.
For this temporary shelter, but the balance is quickly broken. Amber is dissatisfied with Gary's every action, leaving dishes in the wrong place.
Kendo, you don't remember saying Germanic conflation, Kendo?
It's funny because I'm not gonna lie. One of the things I'm gonna be fundraising on Clubhouse this year is to get my degree
Yes.
in psychology thing.
Ask Dr. Huey. Ask Dr. Huey if you said.
This is a 361 square foot.
Oh man!
Oh, yesterday, you were going on yesterday. The Germanic conflation, I'm not gonna lie, was the best time to
We was dying, Kendo. It was the funniest thing we had heard all night.
Full-size kitchen.
That shit's intuitive. What the fuck?
Oven, microwave.
I'm just trying to remember like what.
This is all grids.
If I remember what we were talking about when you said it, I'll tell you.
The closet divider and couch.
Does it sound like I just wanted like
They were debating something and then you interrupted.
You have your breakfast now?
You were asking them had they considered, and you went off on a bit of a diatribe, and then you said, "Oh, what about the Germanic?"
You know what? Yeah. That was night before last. then you have to live here.
That's hilarious as fuck. So it was completely.
It was so
Yeah,
funny, bro.
no.
He
I
didn't have
needed
shit to do
to
with that.
interrupt them niggas.
Okay. He was like, what about the fucking Neanderthalific
Exactly.
inflation? Or like, what the fuck?
It's Neolithic, but go ahead.
So I'm here today because we
I know.
That's literally what Mark does all the time.
What made the moment hilarious is that like the whole room was silent when you were doing it, Kendo. Everyone was trying to follow where you were going. And the pause between Germanic and conflation had everybody on pins and needles.
Perfect
When you
timing.
said conflation, it was just the perfect time.
So it was a true what the fuck moment.
Perfect fucking timing.
What the fuck?
Talk to us or
But what about the Germanics?
permission to talk for us.
Inflation? Like, what the fuck?
That price does go.
Absolutely.
I'm returning.
You gotta have those moments though. Them shit, that's funny.
Hey, yo, I have a question for Huey. Yo, Huey, why you be undermining me all the fucking time, Huey? What the fuck, Huey?
That's just his accent.
Oh,
Hey, Jaguar, stop by motherfucking style, nigga.
A lot of the times when you have debates, I actually agree with you. But the problem is, I think like
Have you heard that, Samoa? And I have one of my debates with you. That's bad, Samoa.
okay, but you listen to the problem. The problem is you say stuff all the time as part of like your reinforcing arguments that I fundamentally disagree with, and I'm trying to figure out to what degree like are those like pillars or let's say posts underneath that like are disagreeable, like necessarily necessarily critical to your actual argument. Like, is your argument contingent on those things, or are you sort of
Questioning as a joke? Are you questioning his metaphysical substrate? Goddamn.
You guys are deflating again.
This is the poor man's food. Like, if you agree with that, with the total outcome, it's like bring up my question. Bring up David.
You know what I think it is, Huey? I think that when I argue, I try to walk myself through the argument, right? And I don't have a great grip on it. I had a great grip on it. I can be more concise and exact. But I would also like to point out.
That's why I look, because it could be the case that like you finally reconcile us. That's why I try to push you so hard to answer the projective question.
And I also don't have taxi, I'm driving, so.
I don't have it either. I don't have it either. But look. The question of the day still remains, which I think is a really critical one for seeing whether or not I can or can't disagree with you. For me at least, right? Which is this: how are you determining that like the projection that naturally happens as a function of, let's say, human cognition, right, is necessarily an interesting factor for empathy itself? Given how we're described, given the colloquial definition of empathy, given all of the other sort of definitive things about empathy, like why is that necessarily like, let's say, a necessary feature of empathy as opposed to, let's say, sympathetic projection, right?
Damn, that's a good question.
Wait,
The sympathetic projection is not. Wait. Sympathetic projection would be like you saying, I can imagine feeling bad for someone. That would be sympathetic projection. But that's different from like saying, hey, if I was a
sympathetic projection would be something like, I see them going through this particular circumstance. This is how I would feel in this particular circumstance. So I can imagine they must feel that way in this particular circumstance.
Okay, so that's kind of like if you had empathy, but instead of like dealing with like the feeling part, you would just be descriptive about it, right?
No.
That would be the essential difference in it, right?
See, when you phrase a question like that, that's where the point of disagreement is, because you just embedded within it that's just like having empathy.
No. I'm saying like saying, for example, like I feel bad. Okay, so give me the example again where you did the sympathetic projection example.
Oh, and then let me follow up with this mirroring thing that I got brought up.
Oh my God, bro! This guy hit up 3 languages.
And then let me follow up on Germanic conflation, because I was cooking.
You watch a video of Israel-Palestine. You watch a video about Israel-Palestine, and you feel bad for those
Why did I Google it,
who
Kendo?
understand the
GPT
yourself in that perspective.
Can you say it one more time?
It's like watching a video about like Palestinian kids being bombed, right?
Oh, wow.
Yes.
don't understand and can't mirror their emotions, exact emotions, and you can't put yourself in their perspective, but you feel bad for them. That would be sympathetic, not empathetic.
Okay, I got you.
All right, so
can I ask you
no, but that's you personally, Haga, because some people can know. Some people do know some people would. They do feel in their heart. They know how those people feel, even though they've never experienced it. They feel like, or we feel like, we know what that would be like to experience that if we were there. We can understand, and that's true empathy.
Yes, that would make you empathetic, but I'm not saying that I don't understand the plight of the Palestinians. I'm using them as an example.
But that's not saying. What I'm saying is, that doesn't mean that just because I haven't lived through what they lived through doesn't mean that I'm only sympathetic and not empathetic. That doesn't mean that. And that's what I felt like you were saying.
Maybe cognitively empathetic because you can put yourself in that perspective. But I made the caveat of explaining a person who can't do that just feels bad for them.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, I got you. So what you're saying is it's not dependent on the information, but rather like them not taking that step.
Emotions, not taking their perspective.
Gotcha.
Right. I think Hackhoff is saying something like, there's a step that must be taken. Hackhoff is saying
1 step 1, 1 step 2.
All right. Hackhoff is saying there's a step that must be taken, and people disagree on what you need to do in order to take that step. But Hackhoff, he's just saying you have to
2 steps forward, 1 step back, as they say. Yeah.
I mean, I said it's fucking dumb as hell. Did it make sense?
All right, so let's see if you guys agree here.
Let me give you my answer, right? I think
I gotta stop taking
right
so seriously.
That it would be some like personal channeling of emotion, right? Or like you, instead of just feeling like bad for them, right? Like that makes me feel bad, right? When you're talking about like, it'd be like there'd be some point where you try to, like I don't say pretend, right? But just be like, imagine if I was that person, and you try to take in like what you know of what's happening, and then how you would feel, right, about that, right? It could also be that you feel bad, right? Could be the same outcome, right? Like I feel bad about it, right? But you've gone a couple of steps further, right? Than just assessing it and giving it some emotional value. You've assessed the feeling that you get now is actually an outcome of your projection of how you would feel if that happened to you, right? Obviously, you're pretending that you're the kid, right? But inevitably, right, the part like that me and Samo are like, I think going back on forward is that's going to have to be done with projection, right? There's no. You're going to have
the walls caving in now. Okay.
No one on stage is going to agree with you and say that you can come into an understanding without projecting yourself. That's actually a function. There's not a single person on stage saying that.
Kendall, do you remember when we were talking about Hollywood and how they worship the Babylonian mystery school system? No, I'm just trying to remember, help him remember what we were talking about when he said what he said. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. It don't have nothing to do with you.
I'm sorry.
It didn't have nothing to do with you. I just was talking about
they were having a conversation.
Okay, and they can continue. I just wanted to say that one thing to Kendall. It would have took 15 seconds.
All right, so let's look at these scholars of psychology. We have Daniel Goldman, we have Rebecca Kine, and we have Elaine Motter. So these three explicitly give you the definition. They say mirroring, emotional contagion, affective empathy is a foundation of empathy, where you see somebody that's sad, and this is superficial, this is surface level, and you can kind of mirror their sadness. But it is not empathy, because empathy has a requirement of adopting perspective. Like, how did this person become sad? Oh, they're sad because they lost a house. Hey, they're sad because their whole family died. Hey, they're sad because the Israelis bombed them. This person, I'm sad because I dropped my phone. These sads are not equatable.
Yeah, but at that point, you're not describing how you feel afterwards, right? Inevitably,
the first one was, you want to fast forward the, okay. So you are surrendering the empathy argument. Now you want to go to the projection.
No. What I'm trying to point out to you, right, is that you're skipping the part where the person's going, like, inevitably what you're going to say is like giving all this data, right? Then there's this outcome, there's this thing that happens, and that qualifies as empathy. And I'm saying that thing is going to be like, now I feel this way about that because I put myself in their shoes accurately according to you. And I'm saying, okay, at that point, that can only happen, Samoa, if you project yourself into doing so. Otherwise, there's no way for you to look at the world, right? There's no way for you to feel about this, about how they're feeling, right?
Projection implies you're using your internal thoughts to tell how a person feels. Cognitive empathy is you taking their perspective. It's full understanding. Projective empathy is you putting your personal thoughts, and most of the time misguided thoughts, onto what they could be feeling, right?
Oh yeah, but I mean, like, for you to know, like, my mother dies, right? Somebody says, "Hey, my mother died," right? And you have no way of if your mother didn't die, then that doesn't mean all of a sudden that you cannot relate to that person. Maybe not to a certain accuracy, right? But you're going to look at yourself and be like, look, what losses have I had? A mother's pretty high, so I'm not going to think about a distant cousin, how I felt when a distant cousin died. That's not going to be. It's going to be
why
like,
did you cry during the Bambi movie?
Wait, don't Joe, chill out. I'm trying to drive a point here, right? So it's not going to be a distant cousin. You're actually, let's say your brother died, right? You're going to try to see how you're going to be like, how did I feel when my brother died, right? To try to have a proximity of how they feel, right? But your mother has never died, right? But you're going to have to scour your memory, your experiences for something that's like analogous to that, right? And even when you find something, you're going to be like, yeah, but in the case of my brother, maybe even more than that, right?
No,
and I'm saying that
you're merging both. You're merging both. That's not how it works. Like psychologically, they're very distinct, right? If you, God forbid, right, came to me and said your mother died, if I'm going to be cognitively empathetic towards you, I'm going to take the perspective in which you're in, which is, oh my God, my mother died. But if I project and say, hey, I know what it feels like to lose a cousin, and losing a mother might be worse, is me making the assumption that it's worse for you, right? And taking on my own internalized ideas of losing a cousin.
Yeah, he's projecting his situation over yours.
And stop trauma dumping, bro. Stop trauma dumping, bro.
My brother hasn't died, bro. Just chill out. My brother hasn't died. But
in every one of your examples, have you noticed that you're trying to compare your experiences to their perceived experience?
You kind of have to do that, though, when you're taking a perspective. So I see where the confusion is.
Yes.
It's just...
Wait, why?
Because then how the fuck do you know what's bad? How do you know what's good?
That's where affective empathy comes.
That's what prevents you from knowing true empathy, because you're constantly only perceiving it from your life experiences. I, as a woman, have never given birth. If I watch a woman give birth, I'm not going to look at a woman in pain giving birth and say, oh, I've never experienced that kind of pain. Let me compare it to tooth pain or back pain. No, I'm going to look at that. Listen to what I'm saying. Because I'm an empath, and I'm trying to get... y'all are doing a whole bunch of Germanic conflation shit, but I am an empath, so I understand this. But anyway, the point is, even though I've never given birth to a child as a woman, if I watch a woman go through that, I'm not going to complain it to back... I'm not going to compare it to back pain or a toothache. I'm going to look at the position she's in, and I'm going to imagine how she feels going through what she is going through. I've never given birth. I don't know what that feels like. But I will put myself, and I will say, and I can imagine. What'd you say, Simone?
Why do you have to imagine when you can allow her story to speak to her unique experience?
Exactly. It's the trauma that you see the person going through that allows you to know what it is that they're feeling. Right? You don't need to feel it. You can see the pain. You can see the struggle. You can see the trauma.
But do you agree every woman's experience is unique in the birthing process?
Yes.
All right. So then one woman to another woman, one woman can go through massive amount of pain, and another woman can go through zero amount of pain. So
yeah, maybe an orgasm, maybe even an orgasm. That's serious.
What's wrong with this dumbass?
No, I'm not serious.
Why not just say the taste of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich?
That's probably the worst place to think about that.
Why would we go straight to like fucking? Y'all are weird.
Hey, yo, stop trauma dumping, bro.
That was fun.
I have zero empathy for anything.
What do you mean that you have to reflect on your own experiences, like when basically receiving theirs?
You have to draw emotion from something, right? So, like, you distinguish when you're being fully cognitive and like taking the perspective. You take the extra step of distinguishing your self-reflection from their experience, but you have to put yourself in some sort of understanding. It requires a level of projection in it,
like something like noticing like emotion, like, oh, that person's mad or that person's sad, like that.
Yes, and then you automatically relate it. You instinctually will probably have some level of projection of your feelings of when you were sad or when you were mad, etc. And then you have to make the distinction of which one is your own self-reflection and which one is you taking the perspective.
What do you mean? You guys feed off of that shit.
No, like
once you see somebody upset, that feed.
No, I got mixed with a lot of sense.
I'm saying that I should be able to suspend it immediately. Me noticing that the person's mad because of their facial expressions or their body language, and that I recognize that, I don't really have to draw like what got me to that position to know this person's at that position. I'm immediately at the point where I'm now starting to receive this person's perspective. Like
that's the contagion. Right, that's the contagion. That's affective. That's essentially mirroring. Like if I see you crying, I'm gonna start crying because you're crying. So I'm taking on your emotions without understanding your perspective.
Well, hold on. All right. Yeah. So the mirroring part. Well, I think you're talking about the action part, but I'm just talking about like the sadness part, like what you're actually recognizing, and then the empathy portion of this kind of kicks in when they start describing how they got to where they got. Because you might have got to where you got a whole different way. So why reflect on the way that you got there if it has nothing to do with the way that they got there? I guess that's my question.
That's when it becomes cognitive. This is my understanding of it, that they're both empathy. One is strictly emotional, which is affective, which is the mirroring without deeper understanding. And the cognitive is like, again, perspective taking. You're taking that person's perspective, and it's probably it is a deeper level of empathy. Both together become true.
Can I get in here, Simone, please? Because I think this is going to answer your question, man. Because I actually have this issue. But go ahead.
No, do you think, bro?
You just cut off hang up like that?
I was dumb, bro.
So I just
that was like Nigerianic conflation.
That's Puerto Rican conflation.
No. So She-Wolf, I'm going to tell you my issue, right? My main issue here is that on empathy, sometimes the way other people react is I don't know empathy a lot of times. My wife tells me this. My doctor, my therapy, he tells me this. He says I lack it. He says he goes
very bad quality.
He says you think you have it because you're acting upon how other people react towards you.
That's a narcissistic trait, Megatron.
You're a sociopath then. You're a sociopath.
No. Listen, my father, when I went, this is the shit that I tell people. My father went blind. I helped him use the bathroom. I did this for like all through high school and even until he passed away in my 20s, right? So when I went through that situation, it's not saying that I was mad or anything. When I was younger, I was doing stuff, and my mom was out cheating on him. You know what I mean? Like, all those feelings all boiled in one. After going through shit like that, I'm saying to myself, like, people tell me stories, zero. Like, I have nothing for them. I'm looking at them with a blank state, like a blank stare. Like, oh, your father beat you up? Yeah, my father used to beat me up too. And I'm looking at them like, okay, and?
Wow.
Like, I have nothing. I feel nothing. The only reason why I do it is because I've studied the way other people react.
Wow.
That's it.
This is like 2005 Joker vibes, bro. Oh, by the way,
No, this is textbook like narcissism. And I love Megatron. I don't even care if he's a narcissist. I'm still love him. But I think that is I'm not gonna say you're a narcissist, but that is a textbook characteristic of narcissism. That doesn't make you a narcissist.
The only person out there, because
right? No, I trust me. I know.
Yeah. We deal with people that have been possibly brutally raped. They look at you when you say, "Oh, well, my father used to be real nasty to me, or he never told me he loved me." Like, they're gonna look at you and give you this blank stare of like, and it's gonna be from an abyss. It's not gonna be from anywhere. They're not gonna be able to. It's not narcissistic. They're just not gonna be.
Megatron, when you listen to other people talk about like their trauma or whatever, something that's happened to them, and you're listening to them, does it make you feel like, how can I explain it? Does it make you feel like you're feeling something?
No, I have to.
You don't feel anything?
Like, so my wife tells me this because she looks at me when people talk to me. And she tells me, she's like, not everybody's going to know your situation. This is what she tells me. Just because you went through shit, you can't expect everybody to understand the severity of shit that you went through, so that you don't have to have empathy for other people. And I'm like, and I tell her, I'm like, it's not that. It's just that, like, my response is like, they gotta grow the fuck up. They gotta, she's like, yeah, but not everybody's the same. So this is the response I get from my wife. I've been with her for 16 years. Not that I don't do this for her. I love her. I have empathy for her when I shouldn't. You know what I mean? But when it comes to other people, normal, conversation or whatever, when people try to tell me their issues, I just have this blank face. Like, I just can't.
Yeah, you're selective with your empathy, which probably means you have difficulty with cognitive empathy. When your kid stubs his toe, you feel sad, right?
Yes. That's my kid, though. That's a little different. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so that goes to show that you can understand and know the feeling, and that's why you're empathetic, but you're selective with who you're empathetic for or with.
No, like, you're using these terms interchangeably now. So in the example you just gave, your kid stubbed his toe. You stubbed your toe before, right? Right. So you know what that person's going through. No, you don't. Right? Like, you know what you went through, but you don't know what the kid went through. Like, you're being sympathetic because you guys share an emotion to something that both of you experienced in common. So, like, if you look into your little into the affective like empathy, it says this is the foundation